this is Chloe here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Versailles. As someone who have visited Versailles a few years ago, I would like to highlight some of the Versailles' famous attractions and the practical experience from a tourist perspective. If you are interested, just follow me.
Versailles began as a hunting lodge, but Louis XIV decided to move to Versailles after his marriage in 1664. During Louis XIV's 50 years in power, Versailles grew on the design of many French artists and architects and became the largest and most magnificent palace in Europe. Louis XV and Louis XVI successively added new elements to the palace, redecorating and incorporating all the architectural styles, from French classicism to Rococo to neoclassicism.
Now you may be thinking, since it's such a great palace, I want to see the statue of David, I want to see the statue of Venus, even I want to see Mona Lisa smile there. But guess what? They're all in Louvre. Surprise! This is because during the whole of French Revolution, Versailles was rapidly looted. Its furnishing, murals, temporary lights all got looted, and even its doors and windows got smashed and dismantled. So, in 1793, the remaining art and furniture were all shipped to Louvre. Okay, now let's start our visiting to Versailles as tourists.
Before you enter Versailles, you enter the marble courtyard. It is the front entrance of the Palace of Versailles, a small square enclosed on three sides. The central building, originally Louis XIII's hunting palace, was renovated by Louis XIV, retaining the original red brick walls and adding marble sculptures and gilded decorations.
Visitors always have to wait in a long line just to get in, and the lines of the entrance line always seems that it will take you a century just to walk through. And for kidding, you can even say to the visitor just behind you at the moment you get into the palace, like, "Hey man, guess what? I'm also an expat here and I have a history of more than 100 years. Oh, the name of my work is called The Tourist from Last Century." Okay, since we have already get into the palace, I will introduce three spots to you. First, the King's Bedchamber, the second, the Hall of Mirrors, and the third one is the Garden of Versailles. Let's go.
First, in the center of the palace is the King's Bedchamber, with the golden red brocade bed and an embroidered canopy surrounded by gilded parapets. On the ceiling is a huge relief called "France Guards the King in Peace." Every day the Sun King gets up with the rising sun. This is the political center of the Palace of Versailles, where the morning, evening, and salutation ceremonies are held. The etiquette part of getting up is really interesting. At 8:30 a.m., the wake-up ceremony begins. It is divided into three key notes. The king leaves his bed, the king wears his dressing gown, and the king takes off his dressing gown and changes into formal clothes.
I was like, "Hey man, if you're going to take off your dressing gown in the third part, why are you wearing it in the second part? I don't understand that. Okay?" Doesn't matter, we just keep going on.
During this period, people are arranged to enter the king's residence in turn. The first group had the right to meet the king in bed, then some had the right to meet the king in his gown and slippers for breakfast, and finally all the people had the right to see the king in his formal clothes.
Here comes another question. If, I'm just saying if, one night, Louis XIV suddenly decided to relax himself by sleeping naked, then the next day in the morning, there can be...
Yo, tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Don't tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Don't tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I wanna really, really, really wanna zig.
That's just my guess. It is said that Louis XIV also have other bedrooms where nobody will watch him. Let's just move on to the next part.
Sorry, I was laughing. Let's continue. Then the Hall of Mirrors. The Hall of Mirrors is the most famous hall of Versailles, a converted loggia. It has 17 large floor-to-ceiling windows facing the garden on one side and 483 mirrors on the other. On the vaulted ceiling of the mirror gallery is a large painting by Leblanc. The floors are carved in fine wood, the walls are clad in mauve and white marble, and the pillars are green marble. The stigma, foot and wall are all brass and gold-plated, and the motif of the decoration is the sun spreading its wings, in homage to Louis XIV. On the ceiling are 24 giant Bohemian crystalline chandeliers and oil paintings extolling the virtues of the Sun King. The furniture and bonsai decorations in the mirror gallery are also made of pure silver. Louis XIV often held a fancy dress ball here.
There were problems too here. For example, the excessive pursuit of grand luxury makes the living function extremely inconvenient. There were no lavatory in the palace, and even the prince had to relieve himself in the fireplace in his room, which was probably doesn't matter to Louis XIV, who only bathed once a year. So, in fact, the whole of Miro was very smelly at that time. There were probably under every lamppost you have just passed. Let's just go out and see the garden. And I know you may ask me here, like, Chloe, why don't we look at the rest of the palace? Because, to be honest, if you're not a professional art taster, but a tourist like me, the rest of the palace, with the few collections it left, it's like a never-ending maze for you. Like this. So, why don't we just go out and look at the beautiful garden?
The whole garden of Versailles is designed in an axis style, integrating the architecture into the landscape layout of the whole garden. In the main landscape structure of the park, a large number of static water features such as canals are applied on the flat terrain. The regular surface of the water, like a mirror, adds a vast and far-reaching momentum to the whole garden. The topography of Versailles is not as varied as that of the Italian terraced gardens, but uses a large number of gentle slopes and micro-terrains. Its slight elevation changes create a soothing visual effect. The interlacing of topographical slopes and pool canals, in precise proportions, exploits the optical illusion. It embodies a very strong outward-oriented ductility, highlighting the infinity of the vast space.
I tried to walk a quarter of the way through this garden on my own. I tried. And that was the first time in my life I ever wanted to be born as a motorbike. Like, literally, a real motorbike with heels. And fortunately, the Palace of Versailles offers a sightseeing train service, but it closes at 3 o'clock p.m. Now let's go back to the beginning of this video and think about how long you have to wait in line just to get in the palace. And after that, you still have to cross the maze of palace just to get into the garden. And it's already past the 3 o'clock p.m. So, if you really want to see the whole garden by the train, the only thing you can do is to come to the Palace of Versailles once more. In conclusion, Versailles is worth visiting. Historically speaking, it was not only the court of France, but also the administrative center of the country, as well as the central embodiment of the social and political wills at that time. Artistically speaking, the grand appearance of Versailles and the strict garden design are the result of cultural classicism set in the heyday of feudal autocracy in France. European rural gardens almost followed the design idea for hundreds of years. What's more, Versailles is definitely worth a second visit, because Versailles always got a way of getting you there the second time. Like the sightseeing train.